Forward Live. This is the podcast live stream, the social media show where we talk about real solutions to real problems, real shit that impacts real people. And today I want to talk about converging two subjects. One is growth. I want to talk about growth, but I also want to talk about thinking outside the box. So I'm calling this episode Growing Outside the Box. And this is really important because one of the things that we face is sometimes people outside of us, our people who are close to us, our family, our friends, our coworkers, they can't appreciate how we grow. In other words, they become yoked to a particular version of us and they expect us to remain in that box. And whether it be thinking or growing, there is an expectation that you're going to be a certain way. You're going to operate according to a certain paradigm, and you're never going to leave that. But what I want to start off by saying is you need to give yourself a license to think and a license to grow. Now, here's the challenge. We all have thoughts, and I've talked in a previous episode about thinking and why thinking about what you're thinking is important, because you have to learn how to govern your thoughts. You can't control when a thought occurs or how a thought occurs, but you can control how you react to the thought, what your reaction or your action in response to the thought is. So what you want to do is, first of all, give yourself a license to think. In other words, you have not only the right, but also the responsibility to think about everything that impacts your life, whether it be relationships, whether it be career, whether it be money, whether it be credit, whatever it is. You have the right and the responsibility to think about this. Why? Because all of these things are inputs into your life, and they have a way of impacting the direction of your life. So if you're not thinking about these things, basically you're giving these things over to autopilot. You're giving them over to an autonomic response, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that your decisions are conscious and that they are directed, that they are focused, right? So you have to have a license to think. But here's the other thing, is that you have to give yourself a license to think outside the box. In other words, an accepted way of doing things may not be the best way for you. So sometimes you're going to have to think outside of the way that you normally thought, or you're going to have to think outside of the way that you've been taught, so that you can expand how your reaction, your basically your reaction envelope or your reaction paradigm. And if you're not thinking outside the box, if you're not occasionally pushing the envelope of your thinking, then you're not really thinking. Again, you might think that you're thinking, you might think that this is a conscious action, but in reality it's autonomic. And basically it's based on some preset parameters in your life, and you just don't give it a second thought. But for example, if you're thinking about if you're thinking about buying a home, right? And normally you think, okay, 30-year fixed rate mortgage and all of that, and then you have to have some down payment. Well, one of the ways of thinking outside the box with that is to investigate owner financing. So you look at the property that you're going to buy and you say, okay, I need 15% down in order to buy this property. You approach the owner and say, hey, listen, I'm willing to give you a little bit more in the purchase price if you're willing to carry part of the note. And that's thinking outside the box. And that's a very simplistic way of putting it. But you have to think outside of the ways that you normally think. Because the thing is that if you're trying to solve problems with the thinking that caused the problem, all you're going to do is exacerbate the problem. You're not going to solve the problem. But if you think differently about how the situation was stacked up, how it occurred, then you have the possibility of creating a solution to the problem, and that's what you want to do. Now, the second thing, I've talked about thinking, now I want to talk about growth, because this is the funny thing, and I've learned this that, man, oh man, have I learned this in spades, especially in the last year, that when you grow beyond what people's expectations of you are, it is a shock to their system. Now, here's the thing, just because it's a shock to their system doesn't mean that it has to be a shock to yours. What you're doing is you're saying, I'm giving myself the license to grow beyond what others' expectations of me are. And when you choose to do this, you begin to grow in different dimensions. You begin to grow in different areas. You know, one of the things that often fascinated me with gardening is that, especially like vine plants, like watermelons, for example, when you're growing them, a lot of times they will grow beyond their little patch, and then you'll have like watermelon on your grass. And it's really a phenomenal thing, because the thing is that you can't tell a watermelon vine how to grow. The watermelon vine will simply find its own path, and it will grow in the way that it needs to in order to produce what it needs to produce. Y'all need to get that. Because if you're just saying, I'm only going to grow in this area, and I'm not going to grow beyond that, I'm not going to grow more than that, you're limiting yourself. Or if someone says, well, you can grow, but you can only grow in these dimensions, in these directions, then what you're doing is you're allowing someone else to dictate your growth. And that's called hobbling. That's called stunting. And you don't want to allow anyone to stunt your growth. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're not allowing others to influence your thinking in negative ways. Now, again, people have opinions, people who are close to you, and they share their opinions with you, and that is absolutely going to impact and influence your life. But if it's impacting or influencing your life in such a way that it reduces your growth or it stunts your growth, then you have the right and the responsibility to reject that. Okay? So again, when you're growing, you're not restricted to your own little pumpkin patch. Pumpkin. You have the right and the responsibility to grow as needed to produce the fruit in your life that you're seeking. And that's really, really powerful. And I wish someone had told me that when I was young, because so much of my life was dedicated to trying to please other people, or trying to grow in the ways that they expected. And I'll tell you, man, when I changed my faith paradigm, that was a moment of growth that was beyond what people were expecting. And when I said, okay, I'm growing in this way, they're like, oh, I can't accept that. I can't receive that. Well, you know, if other people can't receive your growth, if they can't rock with your growth, man, fuck them. Honestly, grow anyway. In other words, don't limit yourself. Grow in spite of people's expectations. Grow in different dimensions. Just because you're in IT or you're in law, it doesn't mean that you have to stay there. You have the right and the responsibility to grow in different directions, different dimensions, if that is going to produce something in your life that you desperately want or need. You have the right. And one of the things that I want to say is you have to give yourself the license. In other words, give yourself the freedom to think and to grow. You know, there's a book, a great book that was written by the late Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich. And in order to think and grow rich, you have to think differently, and you have to be prepared to grow differently. And one of the problems why people don't achieve the success that they want, that they don't achieve the fulfillment that they want, that they don't experience the joy, the happiness, the freedom that they want, is because they refuse to think differently, and they allow others to hinder and hobble their growth. So stop. Look at all of the things that are inputs into your thinking. And again, if you have any questions, go back and look at my video about thinking and get control of your thoughts. Control your thoughts. Or you can't control your thoughts, but you can absolutely control your reaction to your thoughts. Okay, so learn how to control your reaction. Learn how to govern your reaction so that your thoughts don't overwhelm you. The second thing is give yourself the license to grow. You might have a particular profession or a particular vocation, and you say, you know something, I think that I'm going to build tables for a living. There's there's a guy, he's he's a financier. His name is Warren Mosler, and you can look this up. But Warren Mosler was a financier, and he had made millions on Wall Street. And one day he woke up, he said, you know something, I want to build a race car. He was a race car driver, part time. He did that as a hobby, but he decided to build a car, and it was frankly, it was an ugly car. It was called a Consigliere. And it was ugly, but it performed well. It was highly aerodynamic. It was super light, and it was super competitive. And he went on to produce other cars as a result of this. And he's got patents on different aerodynamic techniques. The thing was is that Mosler gave himself the license to grow. And when he started building cars, people said, "Oh my God, what are you doing? You can't build cars. You're a financier." But he did. And that's the point that I want to get to you, is that you can grow and change based on expanding your thinking, and you can absolutely positively change your life. So if you're watching this on Facebook, please share it, like it, and follow this. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the bell to get notifications and subscribe to this channel. And if you're watching via TikTok or Instagram, be sure to like the video and share it. Share it with as many people as you think might benefit from this, because I know that this is good stuff, because these are things that helped me. And I have achieved a certain measure of success in my life, and you can achieve as much or even more, because the thing is, I'm not a hater. If you go past me in your success, I am going to celebrate you. Woo, woo, right? So until the next time, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Be sure to check out me and Aaron Thomason. We do Freology Friday on Facebook Live every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You don't want to miss it. It's always a great time. But until the next time, may you be happy, may you be well, and may you be filled with peace.